maiintindihan po natin talaga yung process of ideation if we understand the concepts of creativity and innovation. So what is creativity? Creativity is defined as the tendency to generate and recognize ideas, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, communicating to others, or entertaining ourselves and others. So, ang medyo hindi po nakalinyang notion ng ang mga tao when it comes to creativity is they think that it's a mental process. No, creativity is actually measured or gauged based on the quality of the outcomes. So babalik po dun sa nabanggit ko kanina, just because meron kang catchy idea or thought, that doesn't necessarily mean that that thought is creative enough or that is a solid idea. So yan po yung ating i-refine yung understanding natin yan. And then, ano naman yung innovation? So innovation is essentially the implementation of creative ideas. So this is essentially in the context of research and development, this is the development part. And dito po kulang na kulang din ang Pilipino. Kulang po tayo sa innovation and that's partly because kulang din tayo sa creative ideas. So again, babalik po tayo sa fundamentals. The ability to do research is the first step to innovation. All right. And this is how this process is interrelated. Ito po yung sobrang established sa mga highly developed countries. They have a fairly robust system that implements their creative ideas to boost their economies. Ayan. Siguro po, ito rin yung gusto kong i-highlight. The first skill that we would challenge for you to teach your students is that creativity is an essential skill. Actually, yung creativity po in the future, it is no longer an option. If you really want to thrive in whatever it is that you do, you have to learn how to be creative. And being creative is not easy because creativity requires change. And when you're implementing change, usually po may resistance dyan. Creativity also requires for you to challenge or question or even reject some of the aspects of what's established. Kukwestiyonin mo, tama ba yan? Yun bang matagal na natin ginagawa? Yan ba talaga yung tamang paraan ng pag-implement? Creativity also requires risk-taking and most importantly, failing. Okay, ito din po yung gusto kong i-highlight sa mga guro. Just because you are performing scientific research doesn't mean that you will always get the answer right. Performing research doesn't always assure you that you are going to get the outcome that you expect. Sometimes, the essence of performing research is realized by failing or learning that what you initially thought would be the answer is not really the answer. Okay po ba yun? Ayan. Okay, next. Creativity also requires dealing with constraints. So meaning, kung meron kang research question, you're performing a systematic study to do that, but then wala kang gamit, sometimes it forces you to come up with other ways of doing it. And dito din po, gusto kong i-highlight sa ating mga guro that creativity also requires challenging assumptions. Kumbaga, yun bang tingin natin na limitation? Limitation ba talaga yun? Yun bang constraints? Are those real constraints? So that is also that is in part creativity. Yung boundaries na minsan nasa utak lang natin, minsan naman hindi naman talaga sila limitation. So that is something that you should also be teaching your students. Is that the only way to solve a problem? Alright. Baka may iba pang paraan. Okay. And then question. Siguro po, merong mga creative na mga tao, yan po ba ay namamana lang or yan ba ay natututunan? So, creativity, so essentially it's a mental muscle that everyone has. But then, your ability or your creativity will only be developed if you practice it. Just like every muscle, kailangan mong i-work out. At sa mga guro po, I'm hoping that you're encouraged to teach your students to practice creativity because this is one of the higher order thinking skills na kailangan ng bagong generation. And you have the power to enhance the creativity within our younger generation. All right? Okay. So, ay bumalik ako. Mag-unshare muna ako ng aking screen and magtatanong po ako sa inyo. Familiar po ba tayo sa iba't ibang types of creativity? Sino po sa inyo ang familiar sa different types of creativity?
Yeah, we can just use our quick reactions on the lower tab. Sa mga nasa YouTube po, you can do a thumbs up for a quick response.
Mukhang shy sila. All right. Okay, in the interest of time, there are 3 types of creativity: creation, synthesis, and modification. All right, iisa-isahin po natin yan. So what is creation? Creation is a form of creativity that generates outcomes that nobody has ever thought of or actualized before. So ito yung sinasabi ni Sir kanina na wala nang masyadong mga ganong, marami ng ideas na na-generate, ang hirap ng makahanap ng bago. And that is also partly because yung view natin ng creativity is about coming up with something all original that no one has ever thought of, that no one ever understood before, and kayo yung kauna-unahan. But then, this is not the only form of creativity, though I have to say that this is actually considered the highest form of creativity. And if you would put this on the creativity ladder, nandun po siya sa taas, but then, if you are a research advisor, and again, if you are making it a mission na yung pag-perform ng students yung scientific research is for them to practice creativity, you also have to recognize the importance of not forcing creation among your students. Kasi siguro yung term po, let us walk before we run, siguro po the more suitable approach na maituro yung creativity sa mga students is to get them to practice yung simpler approaches in creativity. So wag muna po natin i-force yung creation. Alright? Kasi iba-iba po ng levels yan. Alright. Okay. The second form of creativity is actually synthesis. So synthesis, you have 2 or more incumbent ideas or technologies and you are combining them to come up with a new idea. Okay, so by the way, mabalik lang ako dito. So nakalimutan ko i-cover yung example. So creation, for example, yung kauna-unahang naka-invento ng internet. Yon, the internet is something that really revolutionized the world. Yung kauna-unahang inventors nan, they practice creation. For example, like those who were the first to discover CRISPR, creation din yun. So those who are the first movers in a specific field, sila yung nakaka-realize ng ganyang level of creativity. And then, this is naman, you have 1 or 2 concepts or ideas, and then you're combining them to come up with a new idea. So for example, meron tayong mRNA research, for example, like back in the 70s and 80s, which became one of the main precursors of yung mga bagong vaccine technologies, just like that of the COVID vaccine. And then we have nanotechnology. So what happened very recently that really saved the world is yung COVID-19 vaccine na based sa mRNA. So ang ginawa po dyan is they combined din yung final formulation, yung mRNA technology and lipid nanotechnology to formulate the vaccine in such a way na madedeliver natin yung mRNA sa katawan ng tao without it disintegrating and it really targeting yung viral disease. And fun fact lang po, yung isa sa mga original inventors ng lipid nanotechnology to formulate the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine ay katrabaho ko po ngayon. So yun po. So they practiced, so yung nag-invento po ng bakunang yan, they combined mRNA technology as well as nanotechnology to come up with a vaccine. So yan po. That is synthesis. You're combining 2 ideas into 1. All right. And then the next type of creativity naman is modification. So Modification is you have an established system and you're just changing one aspect or one component of it. So for example, yung catalyst. So I don't know if you're familiar with catalyst po. So for the benefit of everyone, a catalyst is a material that speeds up the rate of a reaction. So for example, when it comes to environmental remediation, if you have toxins in water, sometimes po gumagamit tayo ng catalyst para i-degrade yung mga toxic compounds sa tubig. So that's part of water treatment. Iron, for example, compounds of iron are typically used for as anti-remediation agents. And yung iron na yan, sometimes it's soluble in water and sometimes they put it on oxide supports. Pinapatong nila doon. And then meron din naman po tayong technology such as graphene. So graphene is a unique type of solid material that's based on carbon. So medyo iba yung property niya from the usual solids such as like silica and alumina. And so modification, I would actually use an example of a very dear friend of mine from the University of the Philippines. So she is Professor May Joan Aguila, and she's been doing research on graphene. But what she did was they discovered that they know that there are some functions on the surface of graphene na pwede nilang lagyan ng iron. So naglagay sila ng iron or ng ibang metals dun sa surface ng graphene, and they used the new substance as an agent to oxidize or decompose toxic organic materials in water. So ginawa nila, minodify lang nila, binago lang nila yung surface ng graphene to come up with a new material as catalyst for a known application, and that is modification. So anong nangyayari po dito, yung synthesis at modification, these are forms of creativity where hindi ka nagka-come up ng something na all original at never been done before or never thought of before. You're essentially building on what others had developed or established to come up with something new. Ang catch lang dyan is what you came up with is incremental. So meaning, in-improve mo lang. In-improve mo, hindi ikaw yung bumuo from the ground up. But then what's actually is a very important point to raise is that all these forms of creativity are important. Kailangan po natin ito sa mundo. Ang research naman po natin ginagawa is not just to come up with something that is original. Sometimes, the technology that could transform the world is requiring the lower order creativity types. So yun po. So gusto ko po sanang ma-appreciate nyo to na pwede pong ang research topics ng mga estudyante nyo is improvement or extension. Siguro ito yung sinasabing research extension na sir kanina. Extension lang of other people's research. All right. I'm hoping that actually hopefully improved your appreciation of creativity and the types of ideas that your students can tackle. Ayan. So, 5-minute Q&A po. Meron po ba kayong mga tanong about creativity, about the types of ideas that you can come up with depending on the creative process? May question po?
Huwag kayong mahiya. This is your time.
Opo. Actually, ang value po nito mga pinagagagawa natin, yung mga sinasabi po namin, you can read them on books, you know. But then, kami po, we have the practical experience para po mapakita sa inyo na yung iba pong mga nangyayari dito, yung struggle niyo po sa school, kahit po mga scientists na mga nagtrabaho na to for 10, 20, 30 years, these are struggles that everyone has to navigate over. Kahit pagano mo to i-practice. And po, ang magagawa po namin sa inyo is to make you comfortable in the uncertainty, to make you comfortable while tackling the challenges.
May mga questions, Dr. Jeff.
Ayan, okay. So the reason po why, to emphasize research gaps, since almost everything has been studied, para mas creative, mag-modify na lang or mag-synthesize. You know what? Actually po, that is like an acceptable approach. Modify and mag-synthesize. But then, while you're doing modification and synthesis, sometimes, one thing that I did not mention here is serendipity. You know, okay lang mag-practice kayo ng simpler creativity, but then sometimes pleasant accidents happen. And maniniwala po ba kayo that karamihan ng mga creative ideas that were established from 100 years ago, hindi naman po yun talagang pinakaisip lang ng mga tao na ay ito, siguro with the exception of a few of them like Einstein and those like who came up with the mathematical models of the world. Yun po talagang durugan ng utak yun. Pero marami rin po mga discoveries that serendipitously happened just because the experiments that they did failed. Yun po, minsan aksidente lang din. So start where you are comfortable, start doing something that can actually that match your resources. Kasi yung creative pursuit, meaning kapag po marami kayong uncertainties, meaning marami kayong kailangang gamit. Mag-start muna po kayo dun sa simple. There's nothing wrong with that. At yun din po yung gusto namin i-debunk sa inyo. Kami po, I'm working for a corporate for one of the biggest R&D organizations in the world. Hindi po lahat creation ang ginagawa namin. Meron po kaming highly profitable technologies that are just like incremental improvement. Yung halos wala kang binago. It's just like modification. And that is not looked down upon. Do you know why? Because ang basehan po talaga ng relevance ng ginagawa mo is the impact. You might end up like spending all of your resources trying to come up with something that is original, but then at the end of the day, if it doesn't have value, if it doesn't have application, then no one would care. Right? So minsan po, less is more. Yung simple, minsan mas impactful yan. So medyo, yun po yung gusto namin baliin na minsan po kasi may pagka-elitista rin. Ako po, nung bata akong scientist, ang gusto ko, I would like to win the Nobel Prize. You know, I would do this and I would do this. But then you also realize that's not how the world goes. Siguro yung glamour lang or honor na you discovered something that you're the first in the world to come up with or discover. Siguro po may bragging rights yun, meron yung ibang sense of fulfillment. But majority po ng technologies around the world are modifications and synthesis. So be comfortable doing those. And encourage students kapag ang ideas nila ay modification or synthesis, that's all okay. All right? For example, yan. Can you call it modification if you do the same research but you just add more samples? No. Kasi, what do you mean like more samples po? Kasi if it's the same idea, but do you mean po like doing more experiments?
If it's extension to another group of samples, probably. Pero kung nagdagdag ka lang ng subjects, or participants, probably.
Validation lang yun.
That's a very important point. Ayan. Alam niyo po, ito, kami tatlo nila Mama Connie at nila JP nagchichikahan na lang, ganito ka-informal to. So, ayan, keep the questions coming in. One of the challenges teachers facing in teaching research is that majority of the students lack the motivation to read. Yeah.
Basic skill po yan.
And sa mga STEM teachers po, we highly encourage for you to come up with an integrated program along with language teachers. Kasi po magkakadikit-dikit yan. Yun pong ability natin to perform research kapag po hindi marunong sa reading comprehension, hindi nila maintindihan ano ba yung problema, what information they can use to solve problems.
Totoo yan.
Kapag hindi po solid yung math, lalaglag na kayo sa quantitative aspect of performing research. Kapag po hindi klaro yung scientific method, kahit po naiintindihan mo yung scientific concept, you won't be able to deploy your fundamental knowledge kung hindi mo alam din yung tamang sistema.
Tama. Kasi kahit kung gusto nyong mag-modify, kung hindi mo rin naintindihan yung original experiment, kung ano talaga yung principle behind it, hindi mo siya ma-modify, di ba?
Yes. Yes. And lalo na po yung simpleng experimentation, magpo-formulate ka, kapag laglag ka sa math, yung probability mo, lalo na kapag kulang ka sa resources, ilang pagtitimpla ng solution or ng experiment yung gagawin mo. Diba? So, magkakadikit-dikit po yan. And that's also partly the reason why I would like to highlight na pag nagtuturo po tayo research, huwag po sanang individualistic. there is strength in numbers. So pwede po kayo mag-assemble ng team na, yung mga estudyanteng i-assemble ko, ito magaling magbasa yung isa. Ikaw yung mag-cover ng literature. Ito magaling sa math. Itong isa systematic. Ang galing sa science. Ayan po.
Collaboration talaga.
Opo. Lalo na sa high school, hindi po yan thesis. So, try to get to know your students and build the teams in such a way that diverse po yung kanilang talent and skills and magko-complement yun. Alright? Kasi medyo bihira na po kasi din siguro ngayon ang mga estudyanteng well-rounded. Ayan. Okay. Sir, question po. Synthesis rin po ba yung if nag-a-adapt lang po ng established methods tapos pagsasamahin mga methods sa mga research? Yeah. Pero basta
That's exactly the definition.
That is the definition of synthesis. But then, siguraduhin nyo lang din po yung topic at saka yung subjects na gagawin nyo. Medyo may pagkakaiba naman po.
And the application is different.
The application is different.
Yeah, yung end application. Diba?
Yep. We have the generation of most impatient in learning. Totoo po yan. Kaya po, ito din po, ganito yung po yung pag-approach namin sa pagtuturo sa mga guro ng research na wag po tayong mag-focus masyado dun sa outcome ng research. Yun pong skills, yung step. At lalo-lalo na po, how much time do students have to perform research within a calendar year? If you start in the beginning of the school year, 10 months, most likely po, if you're really taking your research seriously, bihira po kayong makatapos ng kompletong research. So, wag po tayong maging outcome or output oriented. You have to focus on the steps and the skills that they have to develop. Okay.